It's over.
It's over. That's what I'm saying, boy. Oh! He got dropped. It's over. Munoz. Oh my.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the CSC Live episode 1. So basically, how this is going to go is from now on Fridays, we'll get into why we're doing it on Fridays. Basically, this whole episode is going to be kind of an introduction. We will go over the titled categories. We'll go over UFC Tampa betting. We'll go over the Global Fighters League, which really has my idea. And we'll go over some MMA headlines. But nonetheless, basically, we're doing it on Friday because, again, a lot of my bets come from the significant strike lines and takedown lines and DraftKings, who I'm rather new to. I've been using them for about the entirety of 2024. They introduce significant strike and total takedown lines for every single UFC event, which was a mind blower for me because when I was on Bet365, they would only do it for big pay-per-views, which made it kind of less exciting to do, and I would hit them on a regular basis. But now we have DraftKings that are doing them every week, but they only release them on Friday. So the perfect time to start this podcast and the reoccurring date being Friday is number one for me. For any updates like that, you know where to go. X, social media, on the Twitter. That is going to be where I advise if there's any changes to the podcasting schedule, if we're going to go live at different times. Again, it's going to be less streamlined. Going to engage with the live chat. Going to go over all the fights, all of that kind of details. And it's not going to be just focused on following a script and coming to you guys with that. I'm going to show you, I'm basically going to do how I make my picks, how my brain works, what I look at, and I'm just going to do that with you guys live on the podcast every Friday. I'm hopefully going to leave you guys with bets going into the UFC event on the weekend. Specifically this week, we're looking at UFC Tampa, Buckley versus Covington, which I'm rather excited for, and it actually is the last event for the UFC until January 11th. They hit the new year hard with a fight night, a little bit of a lighter fight night, but then they get into a couple of pay-per-views. So the UFC is going to start the new year with a bang, but as for 2024, this is kind of the wrap-up event for the year. I am excited for it. I got everything broken down. You'll be able to... Let's jump straight into my live screen. So basically, this is how the screen is going to go when we're doing the gambling breakdown. We got two browsers open. We got the picks, which I'm also going to go around onto Tapology, UFCstats.com, where I kind of go for the information that I have. I'll probably be on Twitter as well when it comes down to who reports, all that kind of stuff. Other gamblers, that kind of stuff, I will be looking on social media. But again, I got the breakdown in the top above me. I have the breakdown of all the fights, the odds on each fighter, the over-unders. I updated the over-unders yesterday. I just updated the live odds today. We'll also go on some of the sites that give you guys odd updates, how they've changed, that kind of stuff. And we'll just go over everything. So without further ado, let's get straight into UFC Tampa. If you have anything to say, comment, leave it in the live chat. I will be engaging with it the whole time. But nonetheless, Colby Covington returns to the octagon to take on the surging Joaquin Buckley. This one's contested welterweight division, and I have no doubt in my mind that the winner of this is going to be right there behind Shavkat Rakhmonov, who was successful on the pay-per-view. Again, it's a main event. Colby Covington at home in UFC Tampa. We got a little bit of Covington at the press conference, calling out LeBron James, that stuff. So basically, when I was looking at this pre-podcast, I was looking at some of the lines. Colby Covington comes into his return fight as really a massive underdog. He's sitting at around plus 200. Buckley, obviously more active, I believe the better striker, comes in as the big favorite. I've already had a nice look at the takedown lines and had two clear points when I looked at it. The number next to the takedown line, so the second box, is actually the odds on the over. So the under is going to be somewhat similar. Just if you're a gambler, you'll kind of know, and we'll be able to see it up on this screen. So right away when I saw the event, Colby Covington's takedown number set at 2.5. The over is a little bit favorited at minus 150. And then you go ahead and you look at some of the results when it comes to Colby Covington's career, eliminating the two Kamaru Usman fights and the Damian Maia fight, where I don't think grappling would have been the ideal way to win the fight. Colby averages 5.3 takedowns per his UFC career. He's 9 of 13 in over 2.5s in all of his UFC fights, and 3 of the misses. So 3 of the 4 misses, 2 against Usman, 1 against Maia. So I really did like the minus 150 on Colby Covington's takedown overs. I'm going to put a brief pause here. I just want to have a look at how the CSC Live is coming through to you guys. If the audio is too loud in the background, anything like that, you could feel free to let me know. Let's have a quick look. So we are live on the channel, which is beautiful. We go ahead and give it a little open up. Advertisements, you got to love that. Just want to make sure the background audio isn't too loud. Again, this is the first episode, so we'll improve as we go along. Unskippable video ads. I'm going to change that. If you didn't know, your favorite YouTubers can change how many ads they run in the video. Can you even hear the background audio? Okay. You can hear it a little bit. Let's turn it up just a bit. I just use the funky music when it comes down to the background tunes. But everything does seem to sound okay. All right, getting right back into it. Oh, yeah, I don't want to change the advertisements. Conservative. Perfect. There we go. Let's do that. Awesome. All right, so taking a look at the other fights. Cub Swanson, Billy Quarantillo. This is Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson has been competing in the UFC in what feels like forever. Yeah, if you just scroll down his UFC stat page, he's had 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. He had 10 fights before 2012. 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. He is competing in his 33rd UFC fight. That is absolutely remarkable. He comes in as a slight underdog against Billy Quarantillo. Quarantillo does have the height advantage, but the reaches are actually identical. Quarantillo coming off the loss to Youssef Zalal. The significant strike numbers heavily favor Billy Quarantillo at 80.5, and the over 2.5 rounds is also favored. To be honest, when I first saw this, I thought that this line was honestly actually pretty good on Billy Quarantillo. I find, again, Cub Swanson, at the end of his career, in my opinion, still looks great in some of his fights. I think he does. He has a couple wins recently. Go take a look at Cub Swanson here. Yeah, he beat Hakeem Dawodu, who is a great prospect. So Cub Swanson still has a lot of fight in him. But Billy Quarantillo, I think, is the rightful favorite here. I think the line could have been a little bit bigger. But again, in a fight that's probably going to go the distance, according to odds makers, it could go either way, really. You never know with decisions. But if you're looking to fill a parlay or you're looking for a favorite that's honestly not too crazy of a line that you really need a guarantee, Billy Q might be the way to go in that fight. Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. Kape getting the respect he deserves. Regionally, he's one of the best. Bruno Silva plus 310. Significant strike numbers, 49.5, 46.5. Over 2.5 minus 180. So the significant strike numbers aren't crazy to me. Don't know too much about either of the fighters in that contest, so we'll move right on. Petrino versus Dustin Jacoby. Have a highlight tape on Petrino. The line has actually moved to Dustin Jacoby. Jacoby sitting at plus 245 now. Significant strike line favoring the under 1.5. Favoring that this fight gets done before the third round. The over 1.5 is minus 215, but it's an over 1.5, not an over 2.5, which we normally do see. Adrian Yanez, Daniel Marcos. Marcos undefeated. I feel like they're really trying to get Daniel Marcos his first loss. He has been going through the who's who of combat when it comes to his last couple fights. Well, that's actually a little bit disrespectful. But nonetheless, he has some wins. Adrian Yanez is going to be a big step up for him. Minus 225 on Marcos to Adrian Yanez's plus 185. I think that, honestly, this line is set up pretty well as well. 68.5, the significant strike line. Yanez, Marcos at 76.5. CKB's Navajo Sterling made a career highlight video for Navajo Sterling. You can check that out in one of my recent videos. We don't have much in terms of fighter props on DraftKings for this one. Navajo coming in wide favorite at minus 800. I think it is pretty justified. Navajo Sterling might be, honestly, one of the better fighters to come out of City Kickboxing. Kevin Jousset was one that came out. Aaron Tao failed on the Contender Series. I think Navajo Sterling could follow in the Israel Adesanya route. He's a dual champion in New Zealand kickboxing. His takedowns are honestly some of the best I've seen from CKB, besides really Alexander Volkanovski, who's just one of the more well-rounded fighters out of that gym. Navajo Sterling, I have my eyes on. Loved making a video on him. Some of his highlights are great. A lot of finishes scattered in there. But he is still rather unexperienced. He only has 5 total fights. He won on the Contender Series. He's undefeated. But I do think that the line is justified. Tuco Tokos, I think from what I remember for him, he was finished on the Road to UFC, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of. Yeah, he was finished on Road to UFC, finished in his UFC debut against Umar Sy. Probably back against the wall when it comes to this fight. Doesn't support a crazy record at 10-4. Probably cut after this one. I don't think that the favorite's going to be upset in here in this fight. Michael Johnson, Ottman Azatar, plus 170 for Azatar. Michael Johnson, minus 205. Azatar is really just on a tough string of fights. He's lost 2 in a row, finished. Looking at this number, the over 1.5 is minus 140, which kind of made me think, like, why is that the case? But again, if you go to Ottman Azatar's career, when I took a look at this, I was pretty shocked. He really doesn't go into the second round. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 of his last 12 were ended before the second round. The over 1.5 here is only minus 140, so maybe a little bit of shade on Michael Johnson. But still, I think that the under at plus money here is probably the way to go. Takedown-wise, Michael Johnson actually favored to get a takedown. He's not super known for that, but very possible. And the significant strike lines definitely favoring this fight not getting to a third round, but still 42.5 and 33.5 aren't low by any means. Joel Alvarez, Drakkar Klose. I think Joel Alvarez is going to be one of the top fighters at lightweight very, very soon. I think that this is going to be a big fight for him. He's still really in his prospect era. The lightweight division at the UFC is absolutely stacked, so it's really tough to kind of make a name for yourself in that division. But still, when it comes to Joel Alvarez, I think he's one of the guys that can do it. Really, his only loss against Arman Tsarukyan, fighting for the title. I have a career highlight video on Joel Alvarez too. If you wanted to go check that out, you can. Only real big loss to Arman Tsarukyan. Demiris Magulov was his debut. Since that, he's 6-1 in his last 8 fights. He's 6-1, in his last 7 fights. So definitely a great fighter. Minus 440. Honestly, think the line is actually set pretty well. Takedown wise, over 1.5, over a half for either fighter is the underdog line, 46.5 to 35.5. I don't have the odds next to the strike lines because the strike lines are usually, if not always, minus 115. So you could just imagine a minus 115 in this significant strike numbers. Sean Woodson, Fernando Padilla. Padilla underdog at plus 130. I'm interested to see how much of an advantage Sean Woodson is going to have in this contest with the height and reach. It feels like Woodson's losses are kind of fluky. Click the wrong one. Feels like Sean Woodson's losses are kind of fluky in my opinion. He will have the advantage here, 6'2", 78-inch reach to 6'1", 76-inch reach. He won't have as big of an advantage as he has in past fights, and that's for sure. Sean Woodson usually towers over featherweight opponents. 6'2" for 145 pounds is absolutely crazy. 12-1 Sean Woodson, and that loss that he has feels a little bit fluky. So to get him at minus 155, kind of the same situation for me as Billy Quarantillo. I think that the minus 155 is honestly low enough that I would be confident taking him in a parlay or something like that. Significant strike lines heavily favoring this fight to go to decision. Minus 238 on the over 2.5. 79.5 is a massive number. And takedown-wise, close to even. Fernando is definitely less likely, according to odds makers. Miles Johns, Felipe Lima. I made a Felipe Lima video as well. You can go check that out on the channel. Heavily favored to go over 2.5 rounds as well. Significant strikes are definitely significantly lower than other fights you'd think would go over 2.5. I definitely like this line here. Felipe Lima is definitely grappled in his regional career. It's a little bit shocking to me that that's plus 110 for over a half. I'm interested to see if maybe that had shifted again. These are more from yesterday, the lines. But if we go take a look Total significant strikes. I like that DraftKings does this now too. This is not normal for events from what I've seen, that they're offering total significant strike alternates, which is going to be fun, and you could same game parlay it. So I give DraftKings a lot of credit for offering those lines. They're confident in their mixed martial arts experience. Again, if I make any plays after the live stream, they'll be on my Twitter, so you'll be able to check them out there. But we'll see if we make any picks in the actual video. But nonetheless, I want to have a look at Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. When it comes to the takedown number, Lima is still plus 110 to get one takedown, and 2+ is plus 550. I'm going to put that down in here. Let's just add a note here because I do really like 2+ is plus 550. I want to mention regionally he's a good grappler too. Yeah, I mean, he's a good striker as well. But to jump to a back, consider it a takedown, and get one of those, I kind of like. If this fight, again, this line right here, the over 2.5 at minus 270, signals me that we're going to go pretty long in this fight. He might not want to grapple against Miles Johns, but still, I kind of like the 2+ takedowns at plus 550. So I am going to take another look at that just from, again, his regional career. In his fight, he does have the fight. Let's open this in a new tab. So he does have the fight with Naimov. And again, Naimov, a great grappler, landed a takedown in that contest. So I honestly like the Felipe Lima here. Maybe even 2+ for a quarter of a unit. At plus 550, I really like. And then the over a half plus 110. If I need a parlay filler, I am going to definitely take a look at that one. Women's fight, Miranda Maverick, Jamie Lynn Horth. Plus 450 underdog on this one. Miranda Maverick, wide favorite, over 2.5, minus 520. Looking at going to a decision here. Significant strike lines, rather low. Take a look at the reasons for that. I'm going to assume that these women have relatively close numbers to that in their 3-round fights. Taking a look at Miranda Maverick. She's gone over in a couple contests recently. 60, 60, 60. She's listed at 56. I wonder if Miranda Maverick has a... Oh, they're jumping to a plus 100. Oh, total fight. Okay, that's fight total. Where is just for Miranda Maverick if we wanted to go up to 60 significant strikes? So you'd have to jump all the way to 65. She's still sitting at 66. She's still sitting at 56 at minus 115. As I mentioned, the significant strike over unders always really minus 115. So if you're looking in the box, 56.5 or any fighter that you see, usually minus 115. But nonetheless, 60. You'd have to jump all the way to 65. Doesn't often hit that number. 66, 63 usually gets just above 60, so they don't actually offer that. And then in some other contests, again, a lot of decisions here. So relative, this fight's going to go to decision. She'll probably, it's a 50-50 really. She's hit it in 3 of her last 5, 3 of her last 7, 4 of her last 7, 5 of her, yeah, okay. So this line, not enough there for me when it comes to that. I did find it a little bit low for a fight guaranteed to go over 2.5 rounds, but still, when it comes to women's fights, you do get a little bit less in terms of significant strikes. Davey Grant versus Raymond Tavares. This is honestly a pretty good fight for an early prelimer on a fight night. Very closely contested odds-wise. 63.5 significant strikes for Davey, 61.5 for Raymond. And this fight is favored to go over 2.5, but still, it's going to be very, very close at minus 120 that the under is going to be basically a pick-em when it comes to the over 2.5. Takedown-wise, they expect Grant to land one. Raymond, they do not. I do love Tavares. Minus 105. I think the fight's going to be very close, though. Davey Grant always puts it on opponents, so I don't see a crazy amount of value here. And then Knudsen versus Rodriguez. Again, another women's fight at minus 520 on the over. Little bit more strikes when it comes to both fighters in this one. And the takedowns are also there, minus 1.5. 1.5 takedowns and 2.5 takedowns. So one thing I would say about this card, that's lacking a little bit, in my opinion, is when it comes to very low significant strike lines. There really isn't any. The card has a lot of fights that are expected to go over 2.5, and even the fights that are over 1.5, the significant strike lines are actually pretty high. So I want to come back to this fight here, because again, Ottman Azatar, when I was looking, he does have a lot of first-round fights. He hasn't been in the UFC for very long, so again, you really don't know. And I think Michael Johnson is a step down in power when it comes to his last two opponents. So he's all 4 fights in the first round. So again, I don't know how much I love the under 1.5 opponent-wise. Trend-wise, clear as day, under 1.5 is the way to go here, especially if over 1.5 is the favored line. Again, I'll mention it again. Over 1.5, that is the line for over 1.5. So if you're a gambler, the under 1.5 is relative to that minus 140. I think that this fight's probably going to end in the first round. Ottman Azatar has never landed 33.5 significant strikes. Going to add that little note there. So the line is 100% on a opponent-based line. You know, I really do like Ottman's power. I am honestly thinking I am going to make a play on this 33.5. Just going to leave a little highlight on it. When it comes to guarantees, it's not a guarantee that that's going to land, but it is one. Oh, it's got down to 31.5 now. Okay, let me update that. So that was from yesterday. So it is coming down. The sharps that are betting significant strike lines are definitely on this fight, and they think Ottman is going to go under, and the line has shifted a little bit. Even 31.5. Never landed in his career. Trend-wise, this is a 100% play. For me, a little more review. Michael Johnson, clear as day. The reason that this one is 33.5 has been to the second round in every single fight except for 1, 2, 3. And he's been fighting in the UFC for a very long time. So honestly, this is pretty much an Ottman TKO, or this is probably going to be an over. I'm probably going to lay some chalk here. Just going to put it down in my Google Doc so I remember. Under. I also love betting. I'm going to put that in my notes. That is probably something that is going to be played. Feel free, again, if you are in the chat. If you don't take Kobe, you're officially a fraud. Feel free to use the live chat. Kobe Covington, plus 205. Guy's a bum. I am debating taking a significant strike line, though. I do like the fact that, again, he's hit it in a lot of his fights. Really the huge question when it comes to the main event on this event. The huge question when it comes to the main event is really how much is the time off going to impact Kobe Covington. He's been fighting in title fights nonstop, and I definitely think his last fight, let's take a look at the date of his last fight. So yeah, his last fight, December 2023. So a whole year off training, rebounding off of the fight. He's done a very good job. He's been in title fights for basically the significant part of his more recent career. And now he's taken really a step down to take on a prospect who is really surging. So I understand the minus 250 is probably around the fact that Buckley, more active, definitely taking on better competition. Well, I can't say he's taking on better competition. Kobe's been fighting champions. So Kobe's got the competition edge. Buckley has the activity edge. I do think that if this fight is anywhere near third, fourth round, and again, the over 4.5 is favored here, I think the over 2.5 on Kobe is definitely the way to go. I'm wondering what you get on 4 pluses, plus 150. I do want to check. Another good book, if you are betting on significant strikes and takedowns landed, is Bet Online. Bet Online is probably one of the best books when you're gambling on stuff that's lesser known, that isn't available in a lot of markets. When it comes to Bet Online, they're actually very, very well done. they do have a lot of markets that aren't readily available on other sports books. Like, again, you're not going to find significant strike lines on fight nights, on FanDuel and stuff like that. You're going to have to look deeper. DraftKings, BetOnline most of the time does have something. And even BetOnline doesn't have it guaranteed. DraftKings is really the only one that I've found so far. Mixed martial arts still a developing sport when it comes to gambling. They had the issue with the PFL, the issue with the UFC coach. So, again, it's still rather new with more controversy surrounding it. So it's going to be a little bit before we get guarantees on FanDuel, stuff like that, before it becomes super readily available. But nonetheless, I want to take a look at Colby Covington if he has any takedown lines on BetOnline. Most takedowns landed. So they have Colby 4 takedowns plus 150. So relatively just taking the odds directly from DraftKings. Buckley at 1 takedown is minus 105. This is a little crazy to me. Buckley at 90.5 strikes. If he's going to be on his back the whole time, that's a significantly high line. What is Buckley's significant strikes today compared to yesterday? So that's the 79 and the 84.5 was from yesterday. So it's still 84.5. I do find that honestly rather high, in my opinion, when it comes to Buckley. They're favoring the fight to go over, but again, if it's going to go over 4.5, I heavily see Colby Covington going back to how he was in his early career. Takedowns like he was against RDA. Push him up against the fence. Work the takedown against the fence. Clinch. Keep himself away from dangerous positions. Colby Covington does have a great chin. But if I was going to bet this fight to go in Buckley's way, I'm thinking Buckley's probably going to land a finish under 84.5. If Colby's going to win, Buckley's going to be against the fence. Not a lot of room to land significant strikes. 84.5 seems like a pretty high price to pay here. I do want to take a look at where we are when it comes to Buckley in past fights. If we take a look, Buckley 86. So again, another 100% opponent play here. He's hit 84 and he's hit above 84.5 in one fight. It was the only fight in his last couple to go to unanimous decision. And again, this is a 5-round fight, so there could be the change there. But still, 84.5 seems significant to me. I think that this fight could really, really slow down. He landed 46 against Nasruddin Imavov. 84.5. I'm thinking under on this one too. He's hit under. So how many fights does he have total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 of 14 fights. Again, you do always have to jot down that 3-rounders. But that is a note. He gets some finishes here and there. If we take a look at Covington's, really if Buckley pulls this off and does it impressively, we could definitely see Buckley in the title picture. If he's able to finish Colby especially, then he's going to be a serious threat when it comes to that top title picture. He's going to be, in my opinion, right behind Shavkat Rakhmonov. And when it comes to if Colby loses, I'd be excited to see Colby fight Ian Gary. This is basically Ian Gary versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, but a little bit less. Not a guaranteed title shot like the Rakhmonov one was. Just a little bit less. But the winner of this one is definitely going to be one fight away or just wait it out for the winner of Muhammad versus Rakhmonov. But yeah, he's only been finished once, TKO'd once to Usman, and then submitted way back when. Don't put a lot into that. So other than that, it is very difficult to finish Colby Covington. I do want to look at some of his opponents' significant strike lines. So Usman, again, a grappling match. But again, opponents of Colby, when they're not on his level grappling-wise, RDA landed 105 significant strikes. That's surprising to me. Unless Buckley is great takedown and defense. He's been working his takedown defense. If that's the case, I think it's going to be a long night for Colby, though. And again, Colby's chin could eat it, so maybe that's where the 84 comes from. So yeah, he landed basically 20 around. That's a little surprising to me. Wow. Yeah, Rafael Dos Anjos, 105. That's a little worrisome. Because if Kobe Covington wins, that's how I was going to look at it going. I did think that it was going to be kind of the Rafael Dos Anjos route. Okay, so what else we got? So we're looking at possibly no plays here yet. Looking at possibly 2.5, over 2.5 for Kobe Covington takedowns. Again, looking at his past, besides throwing away the collegiate national champion wrestlers and one of the best grapplers in welterweight, if not UFC all time, in Damian Maia, he hits over 2.5 a lot. He's hit it in 9 of 10 fights, not including those 3 against Maia and Usman. Unless Buckley is a super takedown machine, I see 2.5 hitting. So that's probably going to be in a parlay of mine. I like Billy Q at minus 148. Again, really just age. I think the fight is going to go to decision, so it'll be close. But I think Billy Q definitely should be a favorite here. I was surprised that the reach was identical. I thought Billy Q would definitely have a reach advantage. But when it comes to where both fighters are in their career now, I do like Billy Q minus 148. And the significant strike and takedown lines, not gonna throw a dart at a dartboard here. I think anywhere you go here is a little bit of a gambling risk. Taking a look, Cape versus Bruno Silva. Cop versus Bruno Silva, sorry. Don't like a side here. Probably favor Cop to win, but don't love the line. Petrino, Jacoby. Honestly, I think Jacoby probably should take this. I think Jacoby's line-wise is better. If I was to gun to my head who's going to win, Petrino probably power edge. Even the grappling from Petrino is a little bit surprising. He's not like one of these super muscular guys that gets gassed early. He can fight an entire fight. He's grappled with guys for long periods of time. His only loss is that loss to Anthony Smith where he was submitted. I do like Vitor in this fight, but the line-wise, if I was to tell you to bet something, probably take Jacoby for the value at plus 245. Yanez versus Marcos. Again, same situation as Petrino versus Jacoby, in my opinion. I would probably say Yanez is the more valuable play here, but I honestly think it's tough for me to see Marcos lose undefeated. He is very patient, great striker like Marcos. Navajo Sterling is the winner in this one. I would never put money on Tokos in this fight if he wins. If he pulls off this underdog spot, I would be shocked. Azatar, 31.5, probably going to play the under. I got it highlighted. He's never landed. 33.5 significant strikes. Could be biased based on recency in the UFC. All of his fights have also gone under 1.5. So honestly, on value, the under 1.5 might possibly be the way to go. If we go take a look at the 1.5 line, you're getting plus 114 there. So it flips the odds a little bit significantly there. So I would probably say maybe play the under 1.5 when it comes to the rounds. That might be the play in that fight. Joel Alvarez, expect him to get business done. Minus 440, no value really on him unless you're doing a heavy favorite play with a couple of fighters in this one. Alvarez does suit the mold of last week. We went with he kind of suits the mold of Dominic Reyes, in my opinion. Reyes was also a massive favorite and one of the guys that I thought was going to get the job done and did, in the end, defeat Anthony Smith last weekend. So if you're going to throw him in like a massive favorites parlay, I think Joel Alvarez is one you can be very confident in. His striking has developed. His grappling has developed. His only loss in his last 6 fights is against Arman Sarukian. He is on a little bit of a run in Sarukian fighting for a title. So I think Alvarez is going to be close to that title picture very soon. I think Spain have a guy here. Woodson versus Fernando. I think Woodson gets the job done. I'm siding with the favorites a lot here. Minus 155, another guy that I could put in a tight parlay. Woodson does have a couple of losses where you kind of question yourself on, like, how did that happen? You can't be losing in that spot. The Kyle Nelson fight comes to mind. Or who'd he lose to? He lost a bad one. I do remember somewhere in the UFC. Saldana. I think this was the fight here where he lost a split decision. And you just kind of ask yourself, what are you doing? You got to win this fight. You got to do it. And then he was submitted. He submitted Julian. He was submitted by Julian Erosa. Erosa was a great fighter, great submission skill, so that's not as bad of a loss. Miles Johns, Felipe Lima. I like the over half a takedown on the Felipe Lima side. He takes down good grapplers. If this fight does last the 2.5, which it's set to do, minus 270, I think that this is a clear play. I'm actually going to put that down. Definitely a play for 1U. Double your money at plus 110. Get that 1.1 U's back. Love the over 1.5. And honestly, going to do probably 0.15. Actually, no, we're going to do 2.5U on 2+ takedowns at plus 550. Again, this fight goes over 2.5 rounds. Lima is a grappler, in my opinion. He has great striking. His striking's unorthodox, but he could grapple. He has a takedown on Naimov. He won his submission against Naimov. I really, really like the 2+ takedowns. I think the book is sleeping on that one, so I'm going to make that play rather quickly here. Miranda Maverick, Horth, don't have a play here. Minus 625 on Miranda. Don't really even have a side on this one. Can't really remember either of their fights, so I'm just going to keep out of it. Over 2.5, minus 520, basically a guaranteed decision. Davey Grant, Raymond Tavares. This one's close to call. And Josephine Knutson, Piera Rodriguez. So what I'm going to do now is I do want to take a look at one of my other favorite resources when it comes to mixed martial arts gambling, and that is Bet MMA Tips. A lot of tipsters on this site. Honestly, you can really see if you have a wild bet by looking at who the tipsters have, who they're willing to put their name on. I really, really do enjoy this site. You can see which tipsters are green, which are red. So this is honestly a very, very good resource. I do want to set it up, though, so it is on the big screen for you guys. So just give me 1 second as I figure that out. There we go. I apologize for that break there. I just wanted to get the bigger screen for when we're going over this. We really don't need to look at some of the other stuff on the other monitor. So taking a look at this, let's have a look at where Bet MMA Tips is on all these guys. Again, sometimes it pays to listen, to read, research what other people are playing. And sometimes you can honestly find pretty prudent, good advice from seeing a bunch of reds on one fighter, a bunch of greens on another fighter, where they include the parlays and what they're kind of looking at. So I do always use this resource. I use this site as a resource. Oops, a daisy. Not that to the end. All right, let's take a closer look here. So Kobe Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. That's what I expected. A lot of splits, a lot of greens on over 2.5. Fight starts round 2 again. You want to throw something in to boost the parlay. That's actually very, very smart. to go with something like that. I doubt this fight ends anywhere near there, and I would honestly think of it as a pretty large lock to say that this fight is going to start round 2, or honestly even round 3 if you're willing to get risky with it. I would be a little worried on the Buckley side. Colby has had his chin rocked a couple times. This guy's been in championship fights recently, takes a year off. I don't know how confident you could be in his chin, so that's really the only risk, but I would take that over like a minus 440 or a minus 500 on this card. That might seem like a lock when you're reviewing it, but is not really a lock. So I do like a lot of these starts round 2 in the main event, and again, you wouldn't see that unless you're looking at Bet MMA tips or you're really, really digging deep. As for the actual pick'ems, a lot on both sides. Makes a lot of sense. It's a tough fight to call. Colby Covington, I probably would say, is the more valuable play. Plus 205 championship experience. He's been hard at the top of the scene. Taking a step back in this fight, in my opinion, from where he's been. Not even really an opinion. He's stepping back from the title picture to take on a prospect kind of finally, because all he's really been given is title opportunities. He loses this one, I think. Then Kobe's really in. He loses this, I bet. Ian Gary is probably the likely and clear fight. He loses that fight too. I don't really know where Colby Covington goes next. This guy was a title fighter for as long as we can remember. Loses this one. If he loses this one, I think the Gary fight's there. If he loses to Gary, I don't know where we see Colby Covington go from there. But nonetheless, from looking at this, maybe throw in an over 2. If I need something odds-wise to boost a parlay, the over 2 for this fight or fight starts round 3, I really like. Swanson versus Billy Q. Honestly, another one. Very, very split. Guys riding with Cub Swanson. I was honestly hoping to see a lot more green on the Billy Q side, and even quantity-wise, not crazy. They do have a lot of picks in here. I do like the submission. Wins by submission seems to be smart to me. If I do recall on the Cub Swanson side, submissions are a little bit of his downfall. Let me get that open here. Cub Swanson. Sub loss. He hasn't been submitted recently. But again, at 850, so that would be plus 950. That's not honestly horrible. And then he's got the late subs at 19 and 26 to 1, which is, again, if you like making those kind of plays, I do honestly not hate it. And then the over-under. Heavy on the over. Yeah, not even a single play on the under. So heavy on the over 2.5, 1.5, whichever you choose. Red on the over 1, but a green on over 1. So good mix there, but everybody going with the over. Cop versus Silva. You got a lot of greens putting him in parlays. I would honestly heavily favor Cop. Silva does seem to be on a good win streak, though, himself. Oh, no, never mind. Weight replacement, defeated Victor Rodriguez. So he does have... But yeah, lost a lot of his heavily favorited fights. Don't love that. Taking a look at Cop's side of things. Yeah, he's been bounced around. Honestly, 2025 could signal big things for Manel. I think that if he can put together a win this one, win one more, I think Manel could be in the same spot as like a Kai Kara France is right now, in my opinion. So, yeah, a lot of people on Manel when it comes to decision. I'm going to lay off this one. Don't know too much about Bruno Silva, so it's not worth diving headfirst into a big underdog. A lot of people on Jacoby did expect that. Going lighter on the units. Dog catcher, 10 units on Dustin Jacoby. That's crazy. I agree. I agree heavily. Not a lot of green bettors on this side when it comes to Vitor Petrino. They do have him in parlays. Again, his odds are wide. If I was going to do a straight pick, I agree. Dustin Jacoby has some potential in this contest. I think odds makers are putting him down a little bit too low. Even though I do agree with them that I would think that Dustin Jacoby is honestly going to lose this contest. Yanez Marcos. A lot of green bettors on Marcos. I, again, agree. I don't find enough value in the line. I don't know how somebody got him at 245. People making stuff up, but I would probably go Yanez. A lot of overs. I agree with the over there. If I was going to make a play on this fight, I would go over. I think that both of these guys, Yanez a little bit less, both these guys tend to, when you look at Marcos' patience, Yanez is going to strike, but I don't know if he finds a big shot. I would definitely favor the over 2.5 rounds in this one, too. Might be a play I make. Again, social media is going to be where we check our plays. Navajo Sterling versus George. Yeah, all Sterling. That makes sense. I wouldn't do it. These guys are crazy, but I've seen crazier upsets. Navajo, I think, takes that one easily. Good mix here. Ends in TKO. That's a really, really good bet, too. I really like that bet as well. Let me get out a little bit of a notepad here. Really? I think I have a notepad. Let's get out a notepad here because, again, really like some of the plays. That's a good parlay filler, in my opinion. I think TKO is extremely a likely outcome for that fight. I like that play. I like it a lot. Closa versus Alvarez. A lot of people on Closa. That's crazy to me. I think people are sleeping on the Spaniard. This guy's a savage. But again, minus 440, you're straight betting that. You got to be a savage. You got to throw him in a parlay if you're going to do anything. And a lot of people are throwing him in a parlay to get the job done. So that does make sense to me as well. Woodson versus Padilla. Any props that I'm thrown off by? Over 1.5. I agree. Over 1.5 here too. That's honestly a guarantee in my opinion. Let me put that down too. I think that's a guarantee. I'd like that play as well. A lot of people with smart plays. Miles Johns, Felipe Lima. I don't hate that play either. Wait, when I come here, what is he? What is Lima? By sub. Lima by sub plus 550. I'd prefer 2 takedowns. Yeah, okay, never mind. 2 takedowns clearing away a better bet there. Okay. Well, that wraps up kind of our Tampa coverage for UFC Tampa this Saturday night. Don't want to take it on for too long. I'm going to be doing a good bit of research into tonight. Keep it to social media for plays. Plays for sure you could take home with you. I'm going to do 1+ takedown. 1 takedown for Felipe Lima. These are on DraftKings. 1 takedown for Felipe Lima. Definite. Going to take the fight tent and TKO is going to be somewhere in a parlay for sure on this fight. The over 1.5 on this fight is going to be somewhere in a parlay. I'm going to need to check the odds and play it with a couple different things. Probably Billy Q. I wouldn't bet him until we get to Twitter. Very likely going to be a play. Kobe Covington, Buckley, start round 2. Probably more likely to fill in a even worse parlay. And the over 2.5 again. Wait on that as well. Going to kind of work out the units that I want to do on that play. Not as confident in that one. And it being minus 150 is a little bit risky to me. 84.5 under is also going to be something I heavily look into for Buckley. So that's kind of the breakdown from what we've learned today. The other thing I wanted to talk about today, the Global Fighters League. I really like the idea. I watched the Ariel Helwani podcast with the CFO or the creator. Oh my God, what am I watching? Jesus Christ, my apologies. Global Fighters League. They announced their full roster. 10 weight divisions. They've went the route of Bellator, which in my opinion, honestly, don't love too much. They went with the UFC, the cut UFC fighters. Again, a lot of them probably do have the potential to be still in the UFC, fighting at the bottom of the top 15. fighting outside the top 15. None of them are real top-of-the-line contenders. UFC, none of them are like top-of-the-line UFC talents. Faces, really, Tyron Woodley, Anthony Pettis, Luke Rockhold, I think, is a major face. Junior Dos Santos, major face. Gegard Mousasi, probably one of the more talented fighters signed in this roster announcement. And then Kevin Lee. I also like the Kevin Lee addition. But again, a lot of fighters that were on their way out of their UFC for lackluster performances. I would have preferred, again, the roster is 120 fighters, so we only got the 50 names to kind of stir up promotional details, like to get fans looking forward to it. But I'm going to be more interested in some of the prospects that they have signed. I watched the Anthony Pettis, Kevin Lee, Ariel Helwani interview where they did talk about kind of structure of how they're doing. Where they did talk about the structure of how they're going to do the draft. Kevin Lee, a lot of it still remains kind of smoky when it comes to details, like how are these standings going to work? Are they going to do division by division? But interesting notes that I pulled from Kevin Lee and Anthony Pettis being interviewed by Ariel Helwani. Kevin Lee mentioned that it's going to be kind of like a college wrestling form of bracket, which means that there's going to be regular season matchups where they compete and kind of set themselves up in standings. From Darren Owen, who is kind of the Dana White of the promotion, he did announce that the top 4 of 6 teams are going to make the playoffs. And then if it's like college wrestling, it's going to be top 4 in each weight division, semifinals, finals. And then I'm going to assume that you're going to get a certain amount of points from being a champion, a runner-up, a third, and a fourth place, or then outside of the playoffs, obviously probably going to get no points. And then one of the teams is going to be announced as champion once you total up all the divisions. Other news, going to be 2 fighters per team from each division. So they have 10 weight classes, 3 women's, 3 women's, 7 male categories. Their weight classes are going to be a little bit different, which was a little surprising to me, Ariel Helwani, when it comes to the commissions. It's odd for them to make that change. He also said that what they fought regionally to kind of counteract heavy weight cutting, they're going to, if you fought at welterweight outside the organization, outside of the GFL, so regionally, if you fought at a like welterweight per se, 170, then you're going to be in their 180-pound division for the event. I don't know how they're going to determine that. Maybe, I guess, when they're put into the draft pool, they kind of knew who's going to be in which division. But I'm interested more once past these names of not legends in the sport, a lot of legends in the sport, but fighters that we do know what kind of weight class they fell into. I want to see the 300-plus other fighters, the prospects, the top talents from regional organizations. I want to see what weight classes they're in because, again, saying if you fought at welterweight, now you're at 180 pounds for us, that's a little bit interesting, if not weird, not something that I like to hear. Stop playing around with weight cutting because somebody's going to get advantage here. Somebody's going to be cutting enough weight where you're forcing other guys not with it, that you don't even get the decision to kind of do that. So interesting when he said that's how the weight classes are going to work. They're extremely different. Light heavyweight's 225, middleweight is 200, and so on and so forth. So the weight classes are a little bit interesting. But again, some of the benefits of a team fight league, in my opinion, like other sports, fandom of a team. Now, I don't know the cities. They haven't announced the cities yet. There's going to be a lot of information coming between now and their draft, which I believe is scheduled for January 24th. But there's going to be 6 teams, and they're going to have locations attached to them. So LA, Toronto, just ideas of what I'm thinking. If there's a Canadian team, you know where I'll be cheering. The fighters assigned to those teams, like the major sport leagues, don't have to be from there. I honestly would have loved an organization to come out and do kind of an international-based team, but that is not the case here. Again, it would be very difficult to do 6 teams internationally based, so that does make sense to me. And America, it's like Americans fill this 100 and these 50 fighters, so it would be very, very difficult to do that. But still, they're going to be based out of cities, and then fights are going to go across different continents. The fights are going to go in different locations, so you might get like a LA versus a Toronto team in Saudi Arabia or in Tokyo or something like that, which I do like. That's how the other sports leagues do it. I know that there is hometown performances, but again, going outside of that, the teams are you're really just going to be cheering for your team. from an outside looking in, there is going to be really no hometown team advantage when it comes down to it. But again, if this is a proof of concept season, so again, as much as it's proof of concept for the Global Fighters League, you're going to need to get some history to get fans attached to a team. I have hope, but I am doubtful that this does get past 2 or 3 seasons. The face Darren Owen is very confident that they have enough funding, especially for this season, and then they're going to try and bring in owners for the teams, hopefully expand the teams. But again, the PFL had a major TV rights deal. That's another thing that I see being an issue for the GFL. The GFL has kind of stated that they're going with, at the moment, their own app streaming, which we saw with Netflix. Even Netflix, he referenced Netflix as being successful in showing that it could be potentially a big moneymaker, but they don't have that in place yet, and that is going to be a huge revenue stream that's lost. Hopefully they get some announcements before their opening event in April, and hopefully they expand the teams past 6. But for an proof of concept season, I am extremely interested in the idea. I'm going to pick a favorite team. I'm going to follow along. I'll probably do some promotion on their events. Competition in the workplace when it comes to mixed martial arts, I'll never look at negatively. I think that there is a lot of benefit from that. So I'm excited for the Global Fighters League 100%. But that'll do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, remember to smash that like button. Subscribe to Combat Sports Central. I'm going to wrap up CSC Live Episode 1. If you watched at any point, thank you so much. If you're watching after the fact, thank you so much. It means a lot. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. And I will see you next Friday for CSC Live Episode 2.